Our scars are part of being human. Hi everyone, I am Christian Nielsen. I am so glad that you have joined me this week. You may notice that this series, which has been called Sunday Reflection, which was a bit of a working title, has a new name, The Path of Beauty. And I'll talk about that a little bit more, why the name change, and in some of our next videos as well. But I'm thinking a lot about something, and the universe seems to be sending me lots of messages about this. Scars. If you've seen the television series Shrinking, it's on Apple TV. If you have an opportunity to watch it, I strongly suggest you do. It is funny. It is beautiful. It's heartfelt. It says so much about grief and loss, and it's just a beautiful series. And two of the stars are Harrison Ford, which you don't really see in a TV series or think of in a TV series, and Jason Segel. And their characters, Paul is an elder psychologist, and Jimmy is a psychologist who has been through a lot of pain in his life, including some deep loss. And there's a scene when Paul, played by Harrison Ford, says letting go of the past means you don't allow your scars to hold you back anymore. And Jimmy says, I'm covered in them, Paul. And Paul says, good. What a shame to be 42 years of age and not be completely covered in scars. They're evidence of a life fully lived. And then he says to him, you can either stay stuck or you can go make some new scars. And then in a little nod to Indiana Jones, he says, choose wisely. The beauty of that scene is Jason Segel, the one who plays Jimmy, was seeing his therapist and talking about not wanting to go back to a class reunion. And he told the therapist, they'll see all my scars. And the therapist said to him, basically what ended up being integrated as Harrison Ford's line. So that's a real thing that came up in his therapy, and they worked it into the series. I know from decades of working with dying and grieving people that scars don't ever totally go away. They stay with us through our lives. Sometimes we can feel like we've healed from a loss or a pain, but then something happens. A random thought, a song, a place, a smell. And it all comes bubbling back to the surface. And I have seen people who have struggled their whole life to move past their scars. And working through that process at end of life is sacred. And while it's hard, it's also very beautiful. Grief and healing are not linear processes. Our scars can be with us for a lifetime. But scars are part of our healing. Our scars can be with us for a very long time, but they can also help us see the scars in others. They can give us a deeper sense of empathy for the suffering of others. The challenge is to accept our scars as they are and integrate them into our lives. Let them become a part of who we are, which I know can be scary. We can't hide these scars, or we can become stuck. We can't just pretend they aren't there, because they are. These scars will show themselves in other ways if we don't work through them and work to accept them. And those scars can then hinder our living a full life. They can sometimes make us afraid to make new attachments, to choose new directions, because those things could also lead to more pain. But that's part of what life does. I think about Henry Nouwen, who was a Christian theologian and a bit of a mystic as well. And he says, nobody escapes being wounded. We all are wounded people, whether physically, emotionally, mentally, or spiritually. The main question is not how do we hide our wounds so we don't have to be embarrassed, but how can we put our woundedness into the service of others? When our wounds cease to be a source of shame and become a source of healing, we have become wounded healers. That was Henry Nouwen. In this series, especially moving forward, we're going to be talking about many different spiritualities and religions. I am thinking about what people who follow Jesus spiritually have been thinking a lot about in these past few weeks. When Jesus is resurrected, he shows up to the disciples, and Thomas, who we often call Doubting Thomas because of this, says, I don't believe it. How does Jesus show that he's resurrected? The scars in his hand, the scar in his side. He invites Thomas to touch it. And then Thomas suddenly realizes who this is. If Jesus was resurrected by God, if the resurrection was complete, why does he still have scars? Finding ways to be reborn in our own lives, which can sometimes be like resurrection, we don't lose our scars. They're important markers on our journey. And we can try to pretend they're not there, but even in Jesus, denying this suffering isn't what rebirth is about. It's about not letting those scars define who we are. Yet at the same time, we can make them part of who we are. And the narrative of pain and resurrection, the pain was real. It happened. But death and oppression didn't get the last word. The scars made Jesus who he was, a part of who he was. And we can find ways to be whole with our scars, not in spite of them. Scars, our scars, are the evidence of our well-lived lives. U2 came out with an Easter EP with some beautiful videos. I suggest you check that out. But one of their Easter songs was Scars. And of course, relating them to the scars of Jesus, but also talking about the scars we all have. And he says, don't cover your scars. It's our scars that give us beauty. One of the verses is, you got lost love and you found trouble when you went looking for your life. You got some scars and some others suffer, but you keep reaching for the light. The doors of your heart were kicked open, but you're leaving history far behind. Can't break what's already been broken, and now it's time. Buddhism tells us that we all face pain in our lives. When we hide our scars, when we don't want to face them, when we cling to something that has already left us, we can suffer even more. Our scars are part of who we are, but they don't, again, define us. And they shouldn't have to hold us back. I have scars. Every day when I get up, I notice the very long scar I have from hip surgery. And I'll admit, especially when it was healing and didn't look good, but even after a time, there was a part of me that realized I would never be the same again. And I grieved that. But in time, I've come to see that scar as that's something else. I survived. And why is that scar dead? Yes, early arthritis runs in my family, but it also came from hiking, from walking, from living life. And without that scar in my hip, I don't know that I'd be walking. I have scars from many years ago when I had a stroke, actually a couple, and you may have heard me talk about this before. And there was a realization after that, too, that I would never be the person that I was. And I lamented that for a long time until I realized it's okay. I don't have to be the person I was. And I started to focus more on the person that I could become. It changed aspects of my personality, which were very hard to grapple with. It affected my left side. It affected my motor skills. Studying classical guitar at the time in college, that was not very welcome. In particular, affected my sensation. One of the TIAs I had slightly affected my speech as well. And for a long time, I lamented those changes. But I realized, and again, this isn't to say that, wow, I'm so glad I had a stroke. I'm not. But I am grateful for the person I became in that healing. To really get to know myself. I had to grieve that I would never play guitar like I did before. And now, of course, I play a lot of ukulele too. I never would be the player that I am today if I hadn't have had that loss. I initially had to find simplicity and work my way through it. And I will never play fast. I will not play like that, but it's caused me to develop a style that is simple and that in some ways is complex in its simplicity. I think it's very unique. I discovered the Native American flute, which you will see me play a lot on this channel or whatever social media you're watching. I discovered it during that time. It comes from the cedar, the heart of the cedar tree. And it's supposed to be what's in our heart is what we play. There's not set music. So we're supposed to play what's in our heart. That strong heart connection was interesting because it turned out it was a heart condition that caused the strokes. And those things were eventually treated through surgery. Don't get me wrong. I grieved for a long time. I was frustrated and angry when I had those strokes. But it pointed me toward being a new person with an intense gratitude for life. I also carry the scars from abusive people who I've loved. And sometimes from churches that I've loved. Sometimes many times over. Some recent experiences have left me with some new scars related to a trauma with the church. But it's also led me back to realizing what my spirituality really is and leading me back to a deeper spirituality. a spirituality that transcends just one religion. It's also reminded me that I have this deeper calling to work with those who are dying and those who grieve. Thinking about where we are right now in the world today, looking at the scars of the world, these aren't times we're going to get through easily as a people. And none of us is getting through this without being scarred. But we can find ways to heal and make things new. Rain is falling. Life is pain. Life is sorrow. Life is also beauty and wonder and joy. To live life is to fully live life is to be open to the possibility of new scars and the willingness to grow through them. The Sufi poet Rumi tells us the wound is the place that the light enters you. And I believe our scars can be the place where our light can enter the world. I think about the Leonard Cohen lyric, there is a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in. If we hide from that pain, we aren't really living our lives. When we learn to grow through our pain, through our scars, that is where we can find transformation. Now, this isn't at all to say that God or the universe wills us to suffer. That's not what I'm saying at all. But through these scars, our hurts are opportunities for transformation. Opportunities to see the world as it truly is. Opportunities to see those flaws and bring change, to bring healing to people, to communities, to ourselves. And this world is in desperate need of healing. Now, again, this isn't some everything happens for a reason nonsense. Because everything does not happen for a reason. I couldn't work with dying adults and even children if I believed that. Sometimes, as they say, shit happens. And I don't believe in any creator or divine force that makes that happen, but I believe that the divine is with us through those experiences. Our scars aren't something to hide. They make us human and they make us alive. True beauty, which has been the subject and will continue to be the subject of this series going forward. True beauty isn't the absence of imperfection. It's the understanding that these imperfections can make beauty. May we grow through and not let our scars hold us back. May it be so. Peace be with you, my friends. We'll see you again. Walk in beauty. Walk in beauty.
There is a balm in Gilead to make the wounded whole. There is a balm in Gilead to heal the sin-sick soul. Sometimes I feel discouraged and think my work's in vain, but then the Holy Spirit revives my soul again. There is a balm in Gilead to make the wounded whole. There is a balm in Gilead to heal the sin-sick soul. Don't ever feel discouraged, for Jesus is your friend. And if you look for knowledge, He'll never refuse to lend. There is a balm in Gilead to make the wounded whole. There is a balm in Gilead to heal the sin-sick soul. If you can't preach like Peter, if you can't pray like Paul, just tell the love of Jesus and say He died for all. There is a balm